Now, the title of tonight's talk is Community Alternative Economic Infrastructure. We live in a time when the world as we know it no longer exists, or people say, what's the alternative? And you hear more and more now about people saying, we need to get off the grid. And with that, they mean, I need to get out of the hands of Eskom with alternative energy, or I need to get out of the hands of the banks with something else. But nobody really has an answer. And there are a lot of good community group activities out there, but they all run into some regulatory obstacles sooner or later. So the purpose of this talk is just to give you, first of all, an understanding of the actual economic playing field in South Africa. And then once you understand it, then how do we solve it and play within the current structures, but also allow ourselves to be alternative things. So to get that started, you need to understand that in 2017, a new act called out the Financial Sector Regulations Act, and that brought in what they would refer to in financial circles as the financial regulatory environment in South Africa, or they refer to it as the Twin Peak model. And what they mean by that is that any money flowing from anywhere in South Africa is affected by either one of the following entities. The first one is called the Reserve Bank. Also, the new name is now called Prudential Authority. And they're responsible for regulating banks, insurers, cooperative financial institutions, financial conglomerates, and certain market infrastructures. And specifically, they are tasked to enforce the next three acts, All Banks Act, the Banks Act, Mutual Banks Act, and the Cooperative Banks Act. The other entity that is regulating our lives is the FSRA. That's the Old Financial Services Board, and anything to do with financial services will then fall under the banner of the FSRA. Now, in what way do they affect our lives? When we look at the Reserve Bank, anything that has to do with savings or loans or any financial transaction somehow resort back under the control of the Reserve Bank somewhere. Then the FSRA, any insurance, short-term, life, whether it's for companies, whether it's for individuals, investment, pension plans, and any kind of investment falls under the FSRA. And then there's a third one that you need to know about, and that's SARS, our friend. And any community entity that is trying to do good out there and is trying to raise funds is at a big disadvantage if they are not registered as a public benefit organization with their own PBO number, so that they can give their donors Section 18A certificates, which the donor can then claim back from tax. So if you can't do that, then you are limited in your fundraising ability. So how does it affect us, and how do we solve it? So the good news is, and before I get there, let me just quickly also clarify the whole thing around banks. So in South Africa, you have three kinds of banks, the different Banks Act, the commercial bank one. When people hear the word bank, they automatically think of a commercial bank, and they visualize a structure somewhere in a shopping center, brick and mortar, tellers inside, ATM outside, and where they can pay in their salary and start drawing money immediately. Now, what they refer to in terms of those banking activity is called transactional banking. But the rest of all the other products and services people are not too familiar with. Now, commercial banks need 250 million to start their application. One person can be the shareholder. They don't need to have a common bond. And as long as they're a company entity registered with SAPC, then they can start the license application, but it's not to say they will actually get the license. Now, there's a strong competition in this field. because once you are allowed to operate as a commercial bank, you're also allowed to do what they call fractional banking, which is another word to say the bank doesn't have to have actual capital. Their assets are the debts of people. So if I want to apply to make a loan for a car of 300,000 Rand, I then have to jump through all the hoops to prove to the bank that I'm credit worthy. When I pass all the tests, they then take my application to the Reserve Bank and say, we have an asset called Jasper, and he's worth 300,000 Rand. And then the Reserve Bank says, all right, you are now allowed to print 3 million, so it's almost a factor 10 of virtual currency, or just its digits. So we trust the digits that we pay each other with, but it's not really backed by actual physical cash. Fortunately, so far, we still have a very good Reserve Bank system. The trust is still in the economy, and people trust the money from banks. But we've seen in the world how quickly this trust can evaporate, and we've seen what happened with our neighboring country in Zimbabwe. There's another good bank form out there called Mutual Bank, and all our old building societies operated on this model. You need minimum 7 members to start your bank, 10 million share capital, articles of association. You don't need a common bond. And then you can make your rules for your clients and send out products there. We used to have a few more, and like I said, all the old building societies operated in this space. They did so that they were eventually bought out by the commercial banks. And the only mutual bank operating currently today is Finbond. But they are not allowed to do fractional banking. They have to have actual money. So you'll see that they try to attract money from the public by offering higher than normal rates for depositors. But their challenge then is to make that work, and they then end up having to search for people who can take loans. And that's typically the space of the call it the micro lending, where you now end up with potentially high risk clients that desperately need to borrow from you, but not necessarily in a good position to pay back. And we've seen how some banks in the past struggled because of this model. Then, since 2007, a new Bank Act was called into being in South Africa, the Cooperatives Bank Act. To start the process, you need 200 members. You need a constitution, a very strong common bond, and it's a bank for the members only. You can start off with as little as 100,000 share capital, but to get to the final position to be a cooperative bank, you need to have at least 1 million in deposits. So we'll tell you more about where we all fit in on that one. But it does allow for entities to then, in communities where there are potentially more than 200, to start their own bank. So, what is this community alternative economic infrastructure? Since 2008, we've been very active in the space of community to just help to understand what is a community, how do we define a community, and we came up with this simplistic model that basically says any community, whether you're an individual family, and by the way, we regard the family as the highest legal entity in any community that shouldn't be interfered with in terms of their rights to discipline their children, to educate their children, to do what they need to do in terms of creating wealth. But then happy families make happy communities, make happy municipalities and happy countries. But somewhere along the line, every family or any business and even communities are in a journey. And we've defined that journey that most people don't know what they don't know, and they are stuck in one mindset where the education system and the political infrastructure and rulers of the day try to keep a struggle position so that they can be easily manipulated and just accept things as it's presented to them through the media and the rest. Now, our definition of struggle is when your income less expenses leaves you with a minus. In other words, you're constantly broke. And then you can't think straight, and you feel a victim, and you're reactive, and things like that. So families in struggle, although they might have fantastic ideas that can set them financially free, create businesses and whatever, they're so focused on survival that they don't have time to invest in their business idea and become involved in the community. So as we can then help and support them on this journey to move them out of struggle into cash surplus, which we call stability, and eventually success, which is then 3 or more sustainable income streams so that they can be released in their significance, which is whatever they are called here on earth to do. But you'll see that as the family move up this journey, they have more and more time and energy to invest in their own businesses and also to the benefit of community. So how do we help this community? So any entity out there that sees community in the same light as we do and want to help build sustainable infrastructure and sustainable communities will sooner or later, as a result of the effort, run into one or more of the regulatory obstacles that's out there in society. One such obstacle is called the Reserve Bank, the National Credit Regulator. You're not allowed to give loans to people if you're not registered there and have the correct legal entity in which to operate in. So we've addressed this since 2008 through 3 entities. GEC Trust is where we keep the intellectual property to help set up any CFI or any mutual bank. So we've got all of that in place. GEC Institute is where we then support people on their journey from struggle to significance. And we are even looking at helping the business communities in that. And then GEC CFI is our prototype bank so that people can see what is possible in terms of a bank. The next thing that we had to address was get SARS sorted out in terms of a Section 18A certificate. Now, many of the entities out there are forced into becoming a PBO, but that's not really what they wanted to do. They just want to get on with the job of uplifting the community. And now they're stuck in a regulatory structure that costs them a lot of money and compliance and so forth. So we've created within the Community Chamber of Commerce Trust a public benefit organization so that all you have to do is register your cause as a beneficiary, and then we can make this structure available to your cause. And it doesn't matter how small or how large the cause is, it saves you the hassle of being the PBO company yourself. And if you're interested, we can tell you more about that. And then finally, and that was the last big hurdle to overcome, in 2018, we then also, through GEC Wealth, acquired the license to now be regulated by the FSRA, and that stands for Financial Sector Conduct Authority, or the old FSB. But not only can we now help people with any inquiry on any kind of insurance product or investment, we can even create own funds and manage those own funds for the people, by the people. So with this regulatory infrastructure in place, that if you are not aware of that and you're operating on this side, and the next moment you run into an obstacle on any one of these, to get your ducks in a row on any one of them can take you 12 to 12 months to sort out. But now with the structure in place, movement, it's now available to any entity that wants to work with us. Now we also have the intellectual property of how do we help these communities to communicate through certain structures. So depending on the entity, they can call it different names, but we're willing to share this IP with them. And we also, and that will then become the relationship manager in the field. And then we're also almost rewriting the rules for financial advice. And we call that position a wealth coach to facilitate people on this journey, not just to try and sell a product, but to actually understand how to help people from squatter camp to Houghton and eventually on their own family office. But here comes our challenge, or our opportunity, is to find as many of these community entities out there, whether it's a church, a stokvel, just a serious family wants to work. But if you have a passion or a focus on helping community in any of the aspects, or whatever is the mandate that you have to help community, whether it's to teach them to create jobs or run a soup kitchen or whatever the case may be, this structure and this IP on how to do things is now available. And the purpose of this talk was then to say, if you recognize yourself in this field as one of these entities, and you have in the past run into obstacles on the left side, or you did not even know that you need the left side, but now you want to find out more, you're then welcome to talk to us at GIG, and then we can see how we can assist you and help you move forward. So that's basically what I wanted to say about the alternative economic structure. So we basically say the field is now leveled for people who want to play in this. And then since the beginning of the year, we started to also build a platform called Community SA, so that we can mobilize communities, and we recognize the family as the highest pillar in that society. But then we say, how do we mobilize communities? We cannot do it for them. So we need to find people within a community to stand up to say, hey, I'll put my hand up, I will become that leader in society. And whether you just want to mobilize your street, that's fine. We can work with you. Now, 10 streets normally make a suburb, so you could become involved in the suburb. About 15 suburbs equals a typical ward in our municipalities, and there are currently 4,468 municipalities, and 16 wards normally municipality, then some municipalities makes up a region, and there are 278 regions in South Africa, and ultimately there's 9 regions nationally. So we say to mobilize that no single organization can do it, but we have started the program, and I will then just finish off with giving you a quick introduction of Community SA, just for your notification, and then you can spread the word, and if you want to become involved with that. So if you type in communitysA.solutions, communitysA.solutions, that will bring you to a site, and it's still under construction, but it'll just give you an overview of what are we trying to do out there in the communities. And we say community support families, and families build communities. So we are looking at a national collaboration in all areas of community empowerment and rebuilding of infrastructures. And then each of these little pictures indicates a specific subcomponent of what we offer. So tax deductible volunteering is where we introduce the concept of, let's say you've now inherit a lot of money, you got retrenched or whatever, you sit with a potential big salary, a big tax bill, but you have now time to put time into volunteering. There's a way for you to lower your tax bill, because your volunteering efforts can be costed, and they call it in-kind offering. And for that, we can also issue a certificate. So that's just a principle there. But it's also a way to get people involved in communities. One of our members is also the chairman of the Doorn Kloof community in Pretoria. And they started to look at what happens if there's an emergency and we don't have power, or there's an emergency and we don't have food, or we can't communicate. And over the years, they developed emergency plans. So if you click on it, you can go into it, and they've made their plans freely available for people to now participate. And hopefully you can reciprocate. And if you've got plans, to also give it to us, so we post it for people. But you can click it and download it. Then there are things, the community bank, you now know about GIG, and we offer people even interest-free loans, and it's your own bank, and how you can participate, and also the ability to become your own bank in the community. Funding solutions, if people have an idea where to raise funds and they want to manage their own funds, the future is in these alternative funds that can help employee wellness programs. Here we think specifically in terms of helping people get out of debt, plus all the things that goes with it. And then communication. What happens if you get cut off from Facebook or WhatsApp, or what alternatives out there? And especially with these big national conglomerates, they can easily control our lives. But now we have alternative safe communication available for communities. We put their own currency. So currently we work in South African Rand, but we are already thinking, what's the alternative if the system should crash? But even if the system doesn't crash, why don't we follow the example of entities like, if you go to Disney World, you can change your money one-to-one with the US dollar for Disney dollars. But the purpose of that is then to keep the money in circulation in that economy. And we believe we need to start looking at our communities where we stay in terms of what is their unique advantage. And think in South Africa like Clarence. Clarence has got a unique advantage, and people travel there for the art and the food and just to break away. Same with Knysna. But what about your area? And then if you are already working and serving the community in whatever capacity, you can then click on national collaboration, and then there's a place where you can then sign up, tell us about your entity, and we will meet with you and see if you share the heart, and we give you the qualifications of what kind of collaboration partners we're looking for. Then community value chain, we're trying to uplift people locally and say, what is it that you can do or produce or whatever? And first of all, just get economic growth going in that community, but in time that can also be something that's of value on a national platform, then we can do that there as well. So how do we do it? Through events, and this is all still to be developed, but we envisage in time that any local community can post their events and get going and take action. If you want to be a member of this platform and be informed of whatever is happening, then just go and sign up individually as a member, or if you represent a community group, bring your community group, and we will then be in contact with you. If you have skills and you want to volunteer, tell us about yourself, and then any one of our collaborating partners can then work with you, and we can see how we can move that forward. And then once you are a collaborating partner, you then become noted on our dashboard, so that people can see who you are, click on it, and it immediately takes it to your website, and people can learn about you and about your projects.